Hello everybody and welcome to Vocabulary Unit 3. You can access these slides from the Schoology file and the listing that's under Semester 1 Vocabulary. You'll look under Unit 3 there and you'll find these terms in the form of these slides. They all come from Book 6 and Book 22 of the Iliad. So without any further ado, let's get underway. Okay, our first term is bereft. You probably have heard the expression to be bereaved. You know it probably has something to do with funerals. Anything, when you're feeling bereft, you're feeling deprived of something. You're deprived or lacking something in terms of sadness, you know. At the end of the play by Shakespeare, Macbeth is bereft of friends. Coyote is bereft of friends in Coyote and the Origin of Death from the Caddo tribe. They are deprived of, they lack something. If you have your name blazoned on your jersey, it means that it is displayed prominently. So to display prominently, to show something vividly, you know, his name was blazoned on the jersey. His name was blazoned all throughout social media. Bluff, we have a couple of different definitions of bluff, but I did put down that we were looking at the noun form. To bluff somebody is an attempt to trick them, to deceive them. We didn't give in to his bluff. But also it's a topographical kind of arrangement because a bluff is a high, steep cliff. You could just imagine Aegis, for example, standing upon the bluff, looking at the ship returning from Crete and seeing those black sails. You know, he was standing upon the cliff or the bluff. To brandish is to wave or to flourish, but usually it's in a threatening way, in a menacing manner. You know, like you're flourishing your weapon back and forth in a menacing or threatening way, like Achilles does with regard to Agamemnon. He may brandish his weapon towards Agamemnon when they're fighting. If someone were to cringe, you kind of fold in upon yourself, right? So it's to bend your head and body in fear. People cringe when they see Achilles coming. She cringed away from the blow, from the punch. When something is in a state of desolation, it's in a state of complete emptiness and destruction. You could have a feeling of complete emptiness too, which would be feeling desolation. A person who's feeling desolation is without any kind of hope. It's kind of an anguished misery. Like can you imagine Lady Macbeth's desolation when you know what she does to herself eventually? Dirges are songs for the dead. So it is a lament for the dead, funeral songs. We sang dirges in the dark, we hear in Bye Bye Miss American Prayer, Miss American Pie, right? A lament for the dead, a funeral song. The word distaff has come to be associated with anything feminine or maternal, but originally it was the stick or the spindle that was used for weaving. You would use it for the wool, you know, to kind of gather the wool. Onto which wool is wound for spinning. Today we can use it for anything that is feminine or maternal. We talk about the distaff side of the family, the maternal side. And I've kind of run out of room, but I think you all know what a dowry is, right? A dowry is the property or money a bride brings into the marriage. Okay, For example, Eliza Doolittle did not have a dowry because Mr. Doolittle certainly didn't care about her at all. In fact, all he cared about was making money off her in a twist of fate, right? Exploit, we have a couple of different meanings for an exploit. We can use it as a verb when you talk about exploiting everything. Sometimes we hear this in a negative sense with regard to our resources, to exploit our resources, to make full use of, almost to the point of decimating them, right? But on a positive side, we can say that an exploit as a noun is a bold deed, a bold or daring feat. He was known for his exploits. Beowulf was known throughout the world, or at least the world that he knew, for his exploits. A bold or daring feat. Sorry for the penmanship on this. I still haven't mastered the Apple Pen very much. Fawning has a negative connotation to it because when you're fawning all over somebody, it's a display of exaggerated flattery. It's probably not, it's not sincere. It's exaggerated admiration of something. So if you're fawning all over somebody, there was the fawning adoration of over Caesar, but they were planning to kill him. You're being obsequious. You know, that's a good SAT word, obsequious. To flit about, if you're somebody who doesn't really sit in one place very much, to flit is to move about rapidly, quickly, swiftly, lightly. You can talk about the birds that were flitting about in the trees. We'll talk about starlings as birds when we get to the Inferno, and we'll see how they're flitting about and wandering and zipping to and from. To gloat is to dwell on one's success. For example, like Theseus, am I not the bravest king alive? Did you see what I did to the Amazons? Did you see what I did to the Minotaur? Forgetting all the help that he had along the way. So to gloat is to dwell on one's success or even another's misfortune. To gloat over someone. Glut as a noun is an excess. You can have a glut of cars on the market, right? An abundant supply. And if you want to use it as a verb, it's the same connotation, the same meaning. To supply or to fill to excess. He glutted his appetite. Okay, to gnaw is to nibble or chew or bite incessantly. Think Cerberus in Theseus at the end when he's stuck to the bench. Cerberus is gnawing on Theseus's fingers along with Pirithous. As a noun, a gorge is a kind of passageway. It's a narrow valley between hills or mountains. If you are curious, I'm sure you probably know the verb meaning. To gorge oneself is to eat greedily. To gorge oneself. But I think we're asking you for the noun form, which is the narrow valley between two mountains or a bunch of mountains. To grovel is to, beg at somebody's feet. I'll use the word obsequious again. To act in an fawning manner, an obsequious manner, in order to obtain forgiveness or favor. I keep coming back to Macbeth because so many words can actually fit into the course of the play. At the end of the play, Macbeth says he will not bow to kiss the ground before young Malcolm's feet. He will not grovel. And there's something stubborn about that, I suppose, but there's also something kind of noble about that too. He will not be fawning in front of Malcolm or Donalbain for that matter. To haul something in is to pull or drag. Is it possible that Paris hauled Helen away from Menelaus and dragged her to Troy? Sure, it's very possible to pull or drag with effort or force. That would make it a kidnapping of sorts. Think about Grendel and Grendel's mother when you hear the word hoard. A hoard is a stock or store of valuable items, right? This is as the noun form rather than to use it as a verb. A hoard is a stock or store of valued objects, like a treasure trove, right? And if you're hoarding something, you know that you're keeping it all to yourself, right? The three rioters in the Partner's Tale were trying to watch over the hoard of gold. Grendel's mother has a hoard of treasure. In fact, Grendel's mother lives in a lair. Here's a perfect segue into the next word, which is a wild animal's resting place. You have to go into the dragon's lair. You have to go into this secret or private place, even if it isn't an animal, your own lair. Beowulf has to fight her on her turf, right? It turns out to be a lethal battle, a deadly battle, a harmful battle for him. If he's mauled by the fire drake at the end of the epic, that is to wound by scratching or tearing. I guess a better example of this would come from Lord of the Flies, wouldn't it? Can you remember the character who was mauled to death? And if you're thinking in the back of your mind, Simon from Lord of the Flies, you are correct. If you're a rabid fan, it means that you have zeal for something. You have fanatical support for something. If you're rabid. You might be a rabid Jet fan, but you're finding yourself in trouble right now. And if you talk about an animal that's rabid, that simply means that the animal is affected with rabies, right? We know the word rampart appears in our Star-Spangled Banner, right? Or the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, right? Oh, say, can you see? All that kind of stuff. So over the defensive wall, which is the rampart, we could still see the stars and stripes flying amidst all the rockets' red glare and all those other kinds of images. So the defensive wall of a city or a castle is called the ramparts. I think we had the word bulwark last week, so it's similar to that. Regalia is all of the emblems and insignia that deal with royalty. For example, I think we had the word scepter last week, so scepter, crown, robes. This would be the regalia of a king or a queen. To rend is to tear apart, to tear into two or more pieces. You rend my heart in two. And then we have just a few left over. Scourge as a noun is the actual whip. We can use it for a person or a situation. If we say that you're the scourge of this town, we're saying that you're a person or a thing that causes great destruction, that causes great pain, that causes suffering. And if we say that someone was scourged, we're saying that they were beaten, they were whipped. We're not necessarily referring to the geographical strait, which is a body of water. Here we're talking about dire straits. So we're talking about a situation characterized by difficulty and trouble. The Greek army was in dire straits because their two great generals were fighting. There was trouble within the ranks between Agamemnon and Achilles. Right? And to whet something as a verb is to sharpen, like to whet the blade, to whet one's appetite. And as a noun, it is the stimulation of something, the sharpening of something. and it could be of appetite or desire. Okay, so there you have it. These words will have some kind of implication in Book 6 and Book 22 of the Iliad. Thank you so much for your attention, and good luck with the definitions.